Welcome to the Divergent AF podcast. I'm your host, Selena Thompson, a late diagnosed ADHD mother on a hashtag journey to unapologetic authenticity. Dive into the rabbit hole realness with me as we overshare unfiltered and relatable stories of what neurodivergent life is really like. Lifting the lid on the honest, hilarious, and heartbreaking topics typically confined to our inner monologue. Get ready to feel seen and heard as we ditch the to-do list, the daily planners, but most importantly, the shame. Welcome back to the Divergent AF podcast. I am your host, Selena Thompson. Today, I thought I would share my ADHD diagnosis story. Yes, we are in episode 5, but hey, a good story doesn't start at the beginning, does it? The reason I was thinking about my diagnosis was last night I was in a complete frozen, paralytic state of just overwhelm. I had to do cleaning up. I had to reply to all these people. I still have not replied to them. I had to pay bills, and I just sat there for about an hour or two, just frozen, getting more and more anxious as time went on. As I was sitting in that state, it made me remember what had led me to get diagnosed. And I feel like my story might be a little bit different from the ones you hear these days, not because I'm super special, but at the time, I did not see it coming. I did not go into it looking for an ADHD diagnosis. In fact, I didn't even know that was going to unfold, and it was very shocking. And going back to a time in my life when things had just completely fallen apart, but I didn't really have a big reason why. It was really just surviving life, chronically overwhelmed, chronically stressed, chronically just getting everything wrong and trying my hardest. So while talking about this does take me back in time to an uncomfortable place in my life, I know that this is just a far too common occurrence. And if this can help anyone just recognize that this may be going on with them under the surface, gosh, that's worth it. That's definitely worth it for me. So skipping back in time, it was about November, December of 2021. I had a 3-year-old and a just turned 1-year-old. So regardless of anything else going on, it's a very busy time with young kids. We all know this. It's the trenches. You don't know until you know, and then you know. I just remember driving along the road and I just was hit with something I've never had before. I mean, you know, we kind of joked like, oh, I had an anxiety attack or I had a panic attack. No, this was my first proper panic attack. I couldn't breathe. It felt like someone was sitting on my chest. I just lost it. And the thing is, it had just come out of nowhere. I still remember how frightening it was. I thought I was dying. When I look back at my medical history, I walked into the GP, probably with my mum, when I was about 13, and I was depressed. And I don't know what my reason would have been. I'm sure I would have given reasons like school, boys. I was just always trying to pull a reason out of the air about why I was depressed. So since the age of 13, I have been on some kind of medication for depression, anxiety, and for sleep. I have cycled through a lot of different types of antidepressants, and looking back, I know that I ended up just settling on one and thinking, this is the best that it's ever going to get for you, so just pretend that this is okay. I don't think any of them really made this huge difference, because when I look back, I was just always overwhelmed. I always was not keeping up. I was pretending to keep up. I just was pretending my whole damn life to be something that I wasn't. That takes a toll. So at the time, I was on the highest dose that I could be on for sertraline and SSRI. And that kind of worried me, because I thought, oh gosh, what now? You know, what now? Where do I go from here? Because I've hit the ceiling on that one, and I always hit the ceiling on the other ones. And I just have to cycle through trying to find something that's going to work for a bit, but it never really works. So I just remember thinking, right, I've just got to add another medication on top of this. And I don't know if it's because I just was not interested in the area of ADHD, or the information was there and I just didn't see it. But I didn't know anything about female ADHD. My understanding was very rudimentary. It was the standard crazy boy that was naughty and loud and they couldn't sit still. That was my understanding. It did not go further than that. And it's actually I'm quite embarrassed to say that that was my understanding. I don't know if it's because the information wasn't as accessible back then, or maybe I just wasn't looking in the right places. This was just not at the forefront of my mind. So luckily for me, when I got a referral from my GP to go to a psychiatrist I'd never seen before, because I actually hadn't been to one in a very long time. I was quite stably medicated, as you would call it. I only had a 2-month wait, which is really unheard of lately. Looking back, I think I had just got in the window before the influx of people trying to get their diagnosis, already figuring it out and then trying to get diagnosed officially. I don't think that wave had hit. Sometimes I get lucky. So I got through Christmas and New Year's, and in the meantime, I had been sent questionnaires from the psychiatrist clinic. And, there were the depression ones, the anxiety ones, yep, stock standard, done a million of those. But then there was a couple ADHD ones. And I looked at it and I instantly thought, this guy is a moron. I've chosen the wrong psychiatrist. He hasn't even read my notes. I don't think he knows that I am a girl. So I was actually a bit worried. But hey, anyway, I filled them all out. I sent them back. If I could best describe my symptoms or my presentation, even to this day, I actually just pulled out this book I never finished. Yeah, if you know, you know. Women with ADHD by Sari Solden and Michelle Frank. And they have this list in it. And I'm going to read it because I feel like they just dig a bit deeper. I may not have finished the book, but I really do love a highlighter, and I've highlighted all of them. So yes, they still apply to me, and I will put a link for this because it is good. You might finish the book. I might finish it one day, but here we go. So these are brain-based symptoms for ADHD in women: forgetfulness, disorganization, inability to accurately predict how long it takes to get things done, inability to keep track of what needs to be done, repeatedly needing explanation or restatement of details or instructions, difficulty speaking in an organized way to express all thoughts, trouble cooking and shopping. Don't worry, it's me too. I find that hard. Difficulty with staying on top of daily tasks and keeping belongings organized for yourself, your house, or your children. Messy car, guilty. Difficulty keeping up with small talk. Trouble staying attentive during phone calls. Fatigue from a normal schedule. Easily overstimulated in stores, malls, or other crowded spaces. Easily overloaded from too much conversation or stimuli, requiring time or space to recover. Trouble sitting still and waiting, even for a small or reasonable amount of time. Well, there is no reasonable amount of time if you ask me, but that's just me. Blurting out or interrupting during conversations. I don't know about you, but I feel like someone has observed me my whole life and has written this list about me. I think putting the symptoms kind of in a context like that makes it so much easier to identify. So have a think if any of those are you, because all of them are me and they are still me. When I think back to that day and that appointment, it was just an out of body experience because I did not see it coming. And I'm going to try not get emotional about it, but it's basically like your whole reality just shifted in the space of 50 minutes. It was an absolute existential shift in my world to be told ADHD, and I think it was because it wasn't on my radar. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew the very cliche basic stigma surrounding boys and men. And so to be hit with this, I wasn't prepared for. And then him explaining everything and how it presents in women and girls, and it was just like ding, 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 ding. And it was honestly like an Apple update. I just sat there in shock, and it was taking ages to just register all of this. I remember just bursting out crying in that appointment, which must happen all the time. But within a week, I was having my first 10 milligram Ritalin, and I will never forget that day. Suddenly, things were clear. I could prioritize. I felt happy. I was motivated. I could write a goddamn email. I was unstoppable. I was Bradley Cooper and limitless. I could suddenly do normal stuff, normal people stuff. I didn't know that my whole life I could not see properly. And I'd put glasses on, and again, I cried. Yeah, I cry a lot, but I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, how much have I missed out on? Whew, getting emotional. How much of life have I missed out on that could have been made so much easier? I just thought about all the opportunities that I had missed or I had stuffed up, and I didn't know. And it was actually really sad. I'm still sad when I think about this time that I've lost. I know that it's a common theme, but you just had no idea what you were going through, and no one did. And you just look back at situations that you'd gotten yourself into and bad decisions and horrible outcomes where you just really didn't know what you were doing or what was going on in your brain. And it's grief. It's really grief, grieving a life that you just could have had. But there's no going back and changing it. I know that this isn't just for women. I know that anyone that is late diagnosed has this feeling of, imagine what I could have become. Imagine what I could have done if I had had this answer, or if I had had this key to me, key to unlock who I am so much earlier. And we'll never get it back. I remember coming away from that appointment feeling validated, feeling, oh my gosh, you weren't stupid. You weren't failing. You weren't a moron. It wasn't even your fault. You know, it kind of gave me this validation that I'd always been looking for, of feeling like I was trying 10 times harder than anyone else in the room and they had no idea. And I was just scraping by and feeling like an imposter. This whole hidden part, my whole personality, everything just being hidden under the surface, trying to look like I was normal, because I thought I was the only one in the world that had these weird little thoughts and did these weird little things. Secret Life of Selena. I used to talk to myself like this. So armed with my validation and confidence stemming from this appointment of having an answer, hey, it wasn't me. I've been trying really hard, but I didn't have the right glasses on. For me personally, I just was so excited to share this with my close friends and family, this huge revelation of, wow, look, this is the answer to me. This has been the answer. And the reception was like trying to sell ice to an Eskimo. It was just out of this world. It was just met with such kind of ridicule, I would say, indifference. I think the hardest thing for me was coming off of such a high of having an answer after all these years, and you're so excited to share it with your friends and family, and then to get a reception that is just quite indifferent or completely, I guess, misunderstood is heartbreaking. I mean, I remember that was actually the hardest part for me, was trying to convince people that it was real and that it was what was going on in me. Because on the outside, it was, oh, Selena, you've got 4 degrees, you always passed, you're organized, you have storage containers with labels on them, blah, 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 blah. But that was me overcompensating and punishing myself to be extra organized, extra perfect, extra smart, and I still felt nothing. I still never got what I needed, and that was satisfaction, because I never felt like I'd really achieved it, because I had worked so hard to get to that. I still never felt good enough. And so I think trying to explain something that is so important to you, that you know in yourself fits, is really heartbreaking. And I know that talking to a lot of the people in the DMs on my page, because they don't want to put a public comment on any ADHD post, which is sad, it's this whole thing of they haven't been accepted by the people around them. Their diagnosis has not been accepted. The people around them have got this narrative, got this idea, this is the person you are. I feel like all our lives we've been told who we are, not who we really are. And trying to fight that is just hard. It would have been really easy had my diagnosis journey just stopped at when I started medication, but it didn't. It was about a year down the track when things were still bad, still rough, still bumpy, when it hit me that it wasn't just medication that was going to help me. I had to unravel, and I'm still doing this now, my whole identity, my whole narrative, my whole personality, being told who I am, being told who I should be. It's this real existential crisis of who the heck am I? And who do I want to be? Who have I always wanted to be? But I felt like I had to people please, or I had to conform, or I had to put on a million masks. Post-diagnosis, nearly 3 years on, it is still a work in progress. I have a lot of rewiring, unraveling to do. Maybe I will never get it all done. Actually, it would be quite typical if I never finished unraveling myself, wouldn't it? But I think that there comes a time when sacrificing who you are is more painful than the fear of opening up and being who you truly are. I had suppressed my real self, my real personality for my whole life. It came out usually at parties, at weddings, and got a little bit inappropriate at the end of the night, but it was always there. But I had suppressed it for so long that I couldn't do it anymore. So while I was sitting there last night in my paralysis station of, do I tidy up the toys? Do I do the washing? Do I go and have a drink? Do I go to the toilet? Do I do the dishwasher? And just absolutely freezing in fear because I just didn't know where to start. It really reminded me that I'm always going to have those moments that will crop up from time to time. And they're not great, but there'll be another one and another one. And I'm going to leave you with a quote. ADHD is a part of you. You were born with it and you will die with it. How has despising and fighting it worked so far? So on that cute little note, I am over and out. I hope you enjoyed listening to this bite-sized episode on my sad but funny ADHD diagnosis story. If you still find me interesting, please tune in next Thursday. I will be dropping another episode. Do I know the topic? No, because that's ADHD, baby.